So, Byron, in South Africa, there's a new bill, right? And this bill, which will probably become a law, allows the Minister of Land Affairs, or whatever it's called, to determine various data about land ownership in South Africa. Most importantly, according to the headline, race data. So, the government's really concerned about which race owns what land in this country. What are your thoughts on this?
I read this news this morning, much like you did. So this is actually an article that has come out of Business Insider, and it basically refers to the Deeds Registrar's Amendment Bill, which apparently is due to go before the National Assembly. So that kind of tells us that we must have missed this when this all kind of started circulating, because this is almost at the final stages now. In other
Yeah.
words, it's going to the National Assembly for voting, and then that's pretty much it. Um, so the initial point of the bill, so the headline of the article is government is preparing to take more direct control of the deed office and gather better race data. So I must be honest and say the minute I read that headline, probably I had a similar reaction to what you did, and that is this government is so obsessed with the pencil test, man. It's like I I don't know. These guys are doing for a country with a constitutional requirement to be non-racial, and for a party that claims it's non-racial, it defaults to race like a serious amount, huh?
Yeah, I mean, we have seen this in South Africa for the longest period of time, where we have laws that actually determine what race you are, and then based on that determination, you get various perks from the state or perks from the private sector, because of your race. But now,
Mm.
the state wants an active role in deciding which race owns what type of properties. So if we look at the sort of explanatory note. Basically, it's the manner and form in which personal information relating to race, gender, citizenship, and nationality of landowners in South Africa may be collected for statistical and land audit purposes only. Yeah, right. And only for capturing such information into a register for official use by any Department of State or administration in the national or provincial sphere of Parliament. So it
Mm.
looks like to me, it's almost like a race audit, but of land ownership. And it's a lot more difficult than you think because most land is owned by trusts in this country, right? So there's a stat that says whites own 72% of the land. It's complete nonsense. Most land is owned by companies or trusts, and those don't have any races, as far as
Yeah.
I know. They're juristic people. But now, if they really want to go deep into the hole and find out exactly which race owns which piece of land, it might make it quite easy to expropriate that land in time to come. I
It's
mean, what
possible.
else would the government use this analysis for? I don't see anything
Yeah.
good.
Well, there are other kind of elements. I'm going to backtrack it a little bit just because I think you've kind of gone quite far in terms of the analysis. So, just to be clear, what the actual amendment bill is proposing is that it will basically remove the power of the Deeds Registrar's Regulation Board. So, the DRRB will lose their powers and they will cease to be the actual regulators of all deed entries. In other words, who owns what in the country, and instead it's going to that those powers to make the regulations are going to be placed in the hands of a minister, specifically the Minister of Land Affairs. So that's what the bill that's going before Parliament says. So if you look at it on the basic point, that the first objection that has been raised with the bill is that it's placing an awful lot of power in the hands of a government minister. But once those powers have manifest, the minister has already said the first regulation they want to change. And the first regulation that they have said that they will be adopting once this power has been put in place is that of capturing the race, ethnicity, gender. I'm wondering how long still is going to be gender preference. And they also want to know the nationality. So that's now we can now coming back to what you said, Ramon, is a lot of land's owned in the country by corporations. I'm wondering if this isn't a way for them to kind of like try to figure out how much land is owned by foreign companies or foreign individuals.
So yeah, there was a land audit in 2018, and basically it was sort of decided that it was a bit too complicated. We know that there's, most land is owned by XYZ. Tribal land is, I think, the biggest piece of land is owned by tribal chiefs or tribal trusts on behalf
The Mkato, whatever, the one in
the
Natal, isn't it? That's the
Ngunyama
biggest.
Trust, the Ngunyama Trust.
Yeah, that's the biggest
But
one.
what if, for example, the minister says, okay, I'm in charge of regulations for entries into the deeds office. What happens if I make a regulation saying, well, we will no longer ever, for the moment, allow the transfer of property owned by X people or by foreign companies or by whatever I decide to do? So you can sell a house, you can sell a piece of property, but the purchaser may not be able to transfer it into his name because he's not deemed to be part of the list of regulations that the minister may come up with at a
Mm.
moment's notice. That's also another consideration.
That is actually a very good consideration. And imagine if we had something like a social credit system where it says you are no longer on the approved list because you went against the government's kind of approved agenda. You could, in theory, be barred from buying land. All of that would be in the remit of the minister's hands, whereas at the moment that's subject to an independent board. Now,
Yeah,
what's interesting is that the criticism that's been raised on this, and as lawyers, I'm pretty sure you did land law and probably the law of conveyancing. And I know when I went through that at university, I basically wanted to put my head through a window of glass because it's the most boring thing on the planet. So, the reason it's boring is, like a lot of it is form filling, a lot of it is relevant data capture, and actually, in terms of professional indemnity, the highest amount of claims made against professional indemnity insurers is actually for conveyancing because it's so technical and people make mistakes, and those mistakes are really, really expensive, especially because we're dealing with the cost or the value of land. So you kind of have to wonder, for a minister to have those powers over something that's highly technical, knowing what we know, and that's what one of the things we say on this channel a lot is our ministers are stupid and they're really not the best people in society. Like, imagine giving those people the powers over something that's really technical and is already subject to a high degree of, like, where actually really competent people make mistakes. Imagine giving somebody who's incompetent the powers over that entire process.
yeah. I
Kind
think
of a scary thought.
no, quite. But the basic argument for anything the ANC wants to do in terms of bills is how does it help the ANC? Don't look at it as how it helps the country or whatever the case might be. If the ANC announces it wants to do something, it's for self benefit. So with these powers, the minister, who is an ANC minister, will basically have a lot of regulations and powers to do quite a lot of things concerning the deeds office. So who knows? Like for example, in some parts of Eastern Europe, if you are not in favor of some particular thing, gangsters literally go to the CIPC or the D's office and sort of just change your name. Like they steal your land through transfer, just like that, through corruption. They don't come to
Well,
your
it's not.
house.
It's not stealing, stolen. There is it? Is it?
Well, it
It's
is. They
like
take your
it's
title away.
legal transfer.
Yeah, I mean, they do it through
Mm.
corrupt means. I wonder if this opens up the possibility of that as well. It's quite technical, there's
I
about regulations and all that, but the more, whatever the ANC wants to do, just know that it is for their benefit and certainly not for our benefit. So the more power they want, it's worrying.
I think the worrying part is, I mean, we've seen this in every single ANC interfered type board. Wherever a minister gets involved, the process almost becomes, as we know, there's a degree of cadre capture, and because you've now involved the person who's being responsible for the regulations, they're the oversight ruler. They're the party that kind of really has overall kind of control in terms of the hierarchy. They're at the top, so they're like everybody's boss, if you will. So once they become boss, then obviously everybody tries to kind of cater to that boss's wishes. And we've seen in a number of other organizations and other boards that what ends up happening is the senior managers in those positions are then filled by cadre deployment. And with that being said, it is not beyond the realms of possibility that this independent board may find itself captured by ANC cadres. And yeah, you're right. I suppose there is a high degree of that. It's like, if you kind of follow the money and you also look at the way a lot of our entities in South Africa work, that wouldn't be beyond the realms of norm. And yeah, thinking about it, maybe Rupert Murdoch wakes up one day and whatever his farm is somewhere or other, that's no longer his. It's now, I don't know, Julius Malima's, because he happens to know somebody, and they gave back the land. They felt that it was his land, so gave it back. And then what would his rights of recourse be? His rights of recourse would be, well, I have a legal interest. They'd be like, no, you don't, because it's not. See, that's not your name, is it? So yeah, that's interesting. It's actually it's quite interesting, especially if we start considering something else. I mean, I'm connecting two pieces of legislation here, and they're probably not meant to be connected. But if you remember the Trespass Act's being amended too, and one of the things that have been put in the Trespass Acts is that of legitimate interest, or should we say perceived interest in a piece of land
That's a good point. As a defense against trespassing.
as a defense against trespassing.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I think we can only leave it with because yeah,
Mm,
we're not sure what the game plan is, but there is some sort of game plan here with the ANC
mm.
and land. And whenever they come close to land or the deeds office or anything like that, you must pay special attention, my friends. Any final thoughts from you, Byron?
Nah, I'll wait on Anthea Jeffries to explain this all to us. She's the kingpin of land reform in South Africa, isn't she? So
Yeah, yeah.
sure
She'll
she'll
write
she'll have some
something
comments on this.
and we'll just copy her.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching, everyone. See you in the next one.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.